Hey guys, it's Olivie Blake, and this is me not writing. Okay, so let's see, what can I tell you? Oh, first things first, I've changed the title of Inheritance. It's just a very common book title, which I knew, and I kind of always wanted to change it. I just didn't have a good title for it. So that book is now going to be called One for My Enemy, coming out January 31st. What else is new? It's early in the morning again, because I've mentioned before that Mr. Blake is a teacher, and Los Angeles Unified School District is currently on strike. This is a really big deal, if you guys know anything about it. It's been super weird for me. Actually, we're going to talk a little bit about what I studied in college. I guess we're going to talk about it right now because it's relevant. But I studied public policy and urban planning when I was at university. So kind of observing this between the teachers union and the school district is very interesting, and it's unlike something that I've ever studied before, because I think that the rise of like viral social media has just been extremely different since like the Trump years. Like something very recent I feel like has happened, where it seems to me that it used to be that the primary thing with strikes was we're going to strike until we get what we want. But now I kind of feel like the attention that a strike gets on social media is also a point of leverage. I don't want to go into a lot of detail about this, but basically LAUSD, they appear to have a lot of money in excess, but they're also 2 years behind negotiations, which means that a lot of the money that they appear to have is already promised to people that they just haven't paid yet. So the teachers union and the school district are basically fighting over money which may or may not exist, that's already been promised to other people. So to me, it feels a little bit unlikely that the teachers union is going to get everything they want. And everything they want is totally reasonable. Teachers are extremely underpaid, classes are way too big, but that involves having money in the budget. So I've just been thinking through this from the experience of having the degree that I have. I have a master's in urban planning, and kind of what can they gain from this? And it occurred to me that what they gain from this is quite a lot of attention, which is something that could be a bargaining tool in the future. Maybe it's not so much the money that they want that they can't have. It's also, look how much power we have, and using that as a tool for later. It's just interesting to watch. And, you know, I support our teachers, obviously. I'm married to one of them. It's hard. He's losing his mind a little bit during this strike because he just started teaching, and he is very much fretting over what his students aren't learning right now. He came into his physics class to realize that a lot of his students are very behind. A lot of them don't know any calculus and also don't know any algebra. So it's seeing this through his eyes, it's just very reflective not only of the ways that public education is currently failing, but also there's just so many layers of failure and so little to be done. And meanwhile, he's losing his mind, and I have to wait for him to go out on bike rides in order to film these videos. The reason I said we were going to talk about me being in college is because someone said, your high school and college experience sounds so interesting. What did you take in your undergrad? So it was urban planning and public policy. I specialized in urban planning, and then I graduated early and got a master's in sustainable land use planning. So that is pretty specific. I kind of went away from public policy and into urban planning, which then was not something that I used actually ever, because then I went to law school right after that. And then after law school, I was going to do a PhD in public policy, so I was going to go back in the public policy direction. Instead, did something else in real estate. I've been sort of all over the place. I've heard it said your 20s are the time for discovery, and that has certainly been true. But now we're here doing this. Anyway, the reason I wanted to talk about that is because someone said, do you have any advice on how to deal with college rejection? They just got their first rejection, and it hurts. Of course it hurts. All rejection hurts, because it feels like saying, they don't want you. But try not to think about it that way. Think about it instead, you don't fit. Two things that don't fit together doesn't mean one of them failed. I say that about relationships all the time. If you don't get into the college that you wanted, there's probably a better fit for you. I know there was for me. The school I wanted to go to, I actually would have had, so I wanted to be an urban planning major. I decided this when I was 16 years old, that I was going to be an urban planner. As you can see, the things that you decide when you're 16 aren't necessarily what you want later in life, which is kind of why it's so ridiculous to even pick a major to begin with. But I digress. The point is, I wanted to go to a school where the urban planning program was built into the architecture program. So I was trying to get into a school of architecture rather than the one I eventually went to, which was more public policy. Which actually, okay, so I guess I'll just jump to the point. That school was a way better fit for me because my interest was less in let's design cities like an architect does and more in how do you look at society the way that a public policy specialist does, and how can you build a city around its use as opposed to its function. These are kind of obscure differences. I don't really want to get into the complexities of what I studied, but they were obviously, I mean, hopefully you can at least see they were very different ways of approaching the same career, and would have eventually led to very different paths. What I studied would have put me basically in government, which is kind of more along the lines of what I wanted, which you can see by my later decisions when I wanted to be a public defender. This has long been a theme. Public service for me was a theme versus the architecture, urban design aspect of it, which I sense I would have been bored with very quickly because people interest me more than things. All of which is to say, I know it's a rejection, and I know it's a form rejection letter that everybody gets, but try not to think of it that way. It wasn't the right school. And you're probably going to get something totally different out of the school you do go to. You just know so little right now. you're just a little baby. You know so little about what your life is going to turn out to be. So do I. So do all of us. You just can't let it get you down. If there's something that you can learn from this, if maybe you applied to a school where your SAT scores were lower than average or something, and if there's something like measurable that you can chart here, then okay, see if you can chart it, but more likely you just weren't the fit that they were looking for. Maybe what you said in your essay or maybe what you hope to study isn't exactly what they specialize in, and that's not something you could know. Or, you know, it could be any number of things. Admissions is tough. You could get, this is the same problem I have with querying, right? You could get an admissions person on like a bad day where they look at your stuff and they're like, this is not impressive, because they're hungry and they're tired and they want to go home. They have to reject someone, so it's going to be you. I don't know how much luck factors into it. I don't know how much of it is within your control. But move forward. You didn't get into the school you really wanted to go to? Okay, you can feel sad about it, for sure. I wrote a thing about how, you know, you maybe don't have one destined path, but maybe you have a bunch of different choices. And when you choose something, or when something happens to make it so that you can't choose something, you cast off a bunch of possible futures, but you gain, you know, however many more. You're going to have so many more options now. You're going to be able to choose so many different things that are different from what you thought you were going to be able to choose. Don't look at it as things closing. Think of it as opportunities that you hadn't considered opening. So life is going to be different than you expected it would be. This is not the first time that this is going to happen to you. A lot of unexpected things are going to happen to you. You're going to not get a lot of things that you want. You're going to get a lot of things that you didn't know you wanted. Welcome to life. But something will come from this that will be valuable. The school that you go to, whatever you do next, there will be value in that. Just be open to what's coming next, because there's no way you could choose for yourself what's going to happen to you, because you don't know what's out there. So maybe you're going to be able to see something is going to happen to you that you couldn't possibly have seen coming. That's what happened to me, and I like to think it worked out for the best. Okay, hi all of you. Watching your videos where you talk about stress really helped me, and I was wondering if you had any more tips to make one feel better in times of distress, how to pass it to get work done. Okay, well, stress is both, there's many levels to stress, right? You get the mental, like just being stressed. It feels like it's all in your head, but there are physiological effects of stress. So let's just acknowledge that stress prompts a release of certain hormones. I don't really know like the science of this, but we're going to pretend that this is science, that there is definitely something that happens to your body in times of stress. So first of all, if you're stressed or you're sad, still take the time to take care of yourself. Exercise, I'm going to always say this, I'm going to always repeat it. Shower, these are things that go, like taking care of yourself is going to be the first thing that goes down the drain because you're so busy dealing with your anxieties. So if you have to make it something rigid where you're crossing it off a list, if you need to make a list for yourself that says, eat breakfast, take a shower, go for a walk, write those things down and accomplish them. Because you're going to forget in times of stress or sadness or depression or whatever you're dealing with, you're going to forget what you need. So try to sit down, tell yourself what needs to get done, and accomplish those things. Because if you take care of yourself, things will be better and easier to deal with in the long run. In terms of dealing with stress emotionally, it's also hard. Stress and distress are different. I guess either way, you want to acknowledge that it's happening. Part of the problem with stress is that a lot of your brain doesn't really want to deal with the thing that's stressing you out. It's not exactly a neutral place. Your brain always kind of wants to exist in a neutral place. That's best for your survival. So a lot of times, instead of dealing with something that it doesn't know how to deal with, it's going to deal with little things, like I mentioned last week. The things that your brain is doing to you in times of stress are going to be off. You're going to feel off. You probably already feel off. So acknowledging the big thing, the thing you're really stressed about, can often be very, very helpful. I even find this as a writing thing. I know this is such an obscure, probably uninteresting metaphor, but I was really upset for a long time with one of my drafts of a book, and there was just something that wasn't right, and I didn't know how to fix it, and I was kind of turning the problem over and over and over, and I was like, well, I kind of want to do this thing, but I can't do that thing because then I'd have to start over. And then I think I talked to someone about it and realized there's no fixing it. I'm just not happy with the way it is. So I'm going to have to start from scratch and do the things that I was telling myself I wouldn't have time to do, or, that would be a waste of time to do. And even though that was sort of the picking up of numerous other stresses, based on the idea that I would now have to start completely from scratch on a new piece of work, there was a lot of relief in that, in knowing I was so stressed about fixing this unfixable problem, so I'm just going to stop trying to fix it and I'm going to do something different. Kind of opening that door to realize that there is another option can be really helpful. This is what therapy is for. This is why it's important to talk about things that are stressing you out or your anxieties that you have, because once you acknowledge them and you kind of accept that that is the way things are for you right now and you have to do something about it, it can be easier to identify the thing you could do to change it, or what could be done to fix it, that probably you're in denial about right now, or it feels like such a huge thing, it feels like such an enormous undertaking that you can't even consider it because just the thought of that is stressful. Usually, if you can acknowledge a problem, then you can probably acknowledge the little ways in which you can fix it. I'm trying to think of a good example here. Sometimes it can be really stressful to look at how much you need to get done in the large scale of things, right? I have a lot to do this month. I have to finish a manuscript and start editing it. I have to prep my book for publication. I have to edit all this stuff. I'm trying to figure out what I get done this month is going to determine a lot of what happens to me for the rest of the year. And what happens this year is going to determine a lot for the rest of my life. And that can be very stressful. Thinking about my career path is very stressful. Am I being successful? Am I taking the steps to be successful? That's huge. I have a lot of anxiety about that. But then once I acknowledge that there is some anxiety and there is some fear, I can break it down into steps, I guess you could say. What do I need to do in order to reach my end goal? And breaking that down into bite-sized pieces, things that are things I know I can accomplish, is going to get me through it. So, knowing what I need to get done today in order to get done what I need to do this week, in order to do what I need to do this month, is actually very calming for me. I don't know if that's true for you, but it is definitely something you could consider. Just think about it in terms of what can I actually do. But of course, also, you want to think about other things you can do for yourself, things that make you happy that maybe you're not making the time to do right now. People you want to spend time with that you haven't seen in a while, places that you want to go, the ways to relieve stress, they're different for everyone. I'm not the kind of person who finds a massage or a pedicure relaxing. I actually find inactivity extremely stressful. Like, my mom once took me to get a pedicure and I had a panic attack and had to run out with my feet wet. This is just, people are different. For me, I need to accomplish things, which is why I suggest things like making a list, even if that list is stuff like take a shower, because that feels really hard to do when you're stressed. Everything feels much harder to do when you're stressed. But that doesn't mean that's reality. So whatever that is for you, however you need to handle things, that's sort of on you to figure out, but make the time to figure that out. I really couldn't tell you what it is. Don't discount exercise. Don't discount the fact that you have a body that responds to activity and there are hormones released when you exercise that are probably going to make you feel better. Stuff like that can seem like a small deal until you actually do it and it feels like a relief. You've done something for yourself. Okay, so you've done something and that's great, and that can get you through the future things that feel too big to handle. I think that's the thing with stress, is it just feels enormous. It just feels so big that you can't possibly deal with it. But that's not true. Everything can always be broken up into smaller pieces. You know, how do you eat a sandwich one bite at a time? That sounds like a very stupid thing to say, but it's true, right? And it's equally true for stress, or so I like to think. Anyway, I guess that is all for today. Quick day today. So yeah, I think I've got a couple more things. I'm sorry if I haven't gotten to stuff that I have promised, but we will. Next week. There's always next week. Slowly making our way towards that goal. Okay, so Inheritance, which is now called One for My Enemy, is coming out at the end of the month, so watch out for that. I'm not doing a pre-order this time. It's just going to come out on ebook and paperback all on the same day, on my birthday, and we're going to have a great day. And yeah, well, this has been Olivie Blake, not writing, and I'll see you next week.